Imagine walking into your dad's room, expecting to find him peacefully sleeping, but instead, you discover something that changes everything. Something that forces you to confront your deepest desires and the boundaries you've always known. This isn't just a story. It's a journey of self-discovery, of love, and of the unexpected twists life throws at you. In this powerful and emotional tale, a young man finds himself caught between the love of his father and the realization of his own identity. Stay tuned for a story that will leave you questioning everything. This is Caught in the Moment. Are you ready to experience a story that will change the way you see family, love, and yourself? I never could have imagined that finding my dad on the couch would completely shift the way I saw him. But when it happened, everything changed. What followed made me question not just the way he viewed me, but the very foundation of our father-son relationship. It all started on a quiet Friday evening. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that clung to the walls, wrapping everything in a sense of stillness. I had just come back from a long and boring day. The kind of day where every hour feels like two, and all you want is to fall face first into bed. My feet ached, and my mind was foggy. The thought of collapsing onto my pillow was the only thing keeping me going. That day turned out to be one of the most unexpected and thrilling of my life. The house was still almost unnervingly so, as if time itself had slowed. I had just returned from an exhausting day. One of those days that dragged on endlessly, where each minute felt like a lifetime. All I could think about was sinking into the couch. My muscles were sore, and my thoughts were scattered. The thought of sleep pulled me like a magnet. But as I made my way down the hallway, something stopped me. The light spilling out from underneath the guest room door caught my attention. It was a surprise for me that he was home already, as normally around this time he would still be working. My dad was the kind of guy who could talk to anyone, and anyone could talk to him, but then at the end of the day, he would fall down on the couch and doze off. He was charming with a quick smile and a laugh that could fill up a room. Though he was my father, there was always something about him that made people stop and stare just a little longer than usual. Maybe it was his confidence or the way he carried himself. Whatever it was, Dad had an energy that was hard to ignore. I stood in the hallway for a moment, debating whether I should knock on the door to see if he was awake. But then curiosity got the better of me. The light under the door wasn't that bright. It looked like maybe the bedside lamp was on. I figured I'd just peek in, make sure everything was okay, and then quietly head to my room. I pushed the door open slowly, careful not to make any noise. The soft creak of the hinges felt louder in the stillness of the house, but Dad didn't stir. I stepped inside, the dim light from the lamp casting a warm glow across the room. And there he was, sprawled out on the bed, lying on top of the covers, one arm draped across his chest. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath catching in my throat as my eyes took in the sight before me. Dad's shirt was untucked and had ridden up slightly, revealing a sliver of his toned stomach. His jeans were sitting low on his hips, but it wasn't just that. His hand rested lazily on his thigh, and as I glanced lower, my breath hitched. He was asleep. That much was clear from the slow, steady rise and fall of his chest. But his jeans were undone, the zipper halfway down, and the top of his boxers peeked out. His shirt was open at the top, his collarbone visible in the soft light. And there, exposed, was what caught my attention, the unmistakable bulge that seemed to press against the fabric of his boxers. I should have looked away. I should have turned around, left the room, and pretended I hadn't seen anything, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot, my heart hammering in my chest, my mind racing with thoughts I didn't want to admit to myself. I had never looked at my dad in this way before, but all of a sudden, I thought he was quite attractive. The sight of him so casual, so vulnerable, stirred something in me that I didn't fully understand, but couldn't ignore. I took a step closer, my movements slow, almost hesitant. Dad's face was turned slightly to the side, his expression peaceful, completely unaware of my presence. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, but the closer I got, the harder it became to ignore the pull I felt toward him. What was I doing? I could hear the rational part of my mind screaming at me to stop, to walk away, but it was drowned out by the strange mix of curiosity and desire that had taken hold of me. I had never thought about Dad like this before. He was family, this was wrong. But the way the light played across his skin, the way his body was stretched out so comfortably on the bed, it was like I couldn't look away. I knelt down beside the bed, my hands trembling slightly as I reached out, my fingertips brushing lightly against the exposed skin of his stomach. The touch was feather-light, barely there, but it sent a jolt through me like electricity racing through my veins. I held my breath, half expecting him to wake up, but he didn't stir. Emboldened, I let my hand move higher, my fingers trailing up toward his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my touch. My heart pounded so loudly in my ears that I could barely think. What was I doing? This was insane, but I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to stop. I leaned in closer, the faint scent of his cologne filling the space between us. My gaze moved to his face, taking in the strong lines of his jaw, the slight stubble that darkened his cheeks. He looked so calm, so at peace, completely unaware of what was happening. "Dad," I whispered softly, my voice barely audible in the quiet room. He didn't say anything. His breathing remained exactly the same, his lips slightly parted in sleep. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, and before I could stop myself, I pressed a soft kiss to his hand, just where my fingers had been moments ago. His skin was warm beneath my lips, and the touch sent another shiver through me. My heart raced, my mind spinning with thoughts I couldn't control. This was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. My lips trailed up his arm, placing soft kisses along the way, each one more daring than the last. His skin was smooth, warm, and the scent of his cologne was intoxicating. My pulse quickened, heat rising in my chest as I leaned in closer, my breath ghosting over his neck. That's when he stirred, a soft murmur escaping his lips, and I froze. My heart leaped into my throat as I stared at him, terrified that he was going to wake up, that he was going to open his eyes and see me like this, so close, too close. But after a moment, he sighed, his body relaxing again, and I exhaled shakily, relief washing over me. I should have stopped. I should have gotten up and left the room before things went any further, but I couldn't. I was caught in the moment, caught in the strange, overwhelming need that had taken hold of me. My body refused to listen to the voices in my head telling me to leave. I was too close now, too far into the moment to turn back. Every rational part of me screamed to get out, to leave before things went too far, but something deeper, something primal, held me there. My fingers lingered on my dad's arm, tracing a path along the toned muscle, and I could feel his pulse beneath my touch, steady and strong, making my own heart race faster. He shifted again, and my breath caught, but he still didn't wake. I hesitated, my hand hovering just above his chest, my thoughts a mess of confusion and desire. What was I even doing? This was wrong in so many ways. But the pull between us was undeniable. Even if he wasn't conscious of it, he let out a soft sigh in his sleep, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. I bit my lip, my eyes drifting down to the waistband of his jeans, still slightly undone. I wasn't sure if it was intentional on his part, or if it had just happened while he slept, but the sight of him like this, so exposed, sent a rush of heat through me that I couldn't ignore. My fingers moved almost of their own accord, lightly brushing against the fabric of his jeans where the zipper had come halfway down. The material was soft under my touch, and I could feel the warmth of his skin beneath it. My heart pounded in my chest as I traced my fingers along the edge of his jeans, just above the waistband of his boxers. I glanced up at his face, half expecting him to wake up and catch me in the act, but his eyes remained closed, his breathing slow and even. He was still asleep, blissfully unaware of what I was doing, and yet, the way his body responded to my touch, the way he made soft sounds, made it feel like he was aware on some level, like he was waiting for this just as much as I was. I leaned in closer, my breath coming in short, shallow bursts. The room felt warmer, the air thicker, and I could barely think straight as my fingers brushed against the waistband of his boxers. I hesitated again, my mind screaming at me to stop, but my body ignored the warnings. "Dad," I whispered again, my voice barely audible in the quiet room. He stirred again, his lips parting slightly, but he didn't wake. I swallowed hard, my mouth dry, and slowly, carefully, I let my fingers slip beneath the waistband of his boxers. The heat of his skin against my fingers sent a shiver through me, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. This was wrong. I knew that. But the way his body reacted to my touch, the way his chest rose and fell in time with mine, made it impossible to stop. There was something magnetic about this moment, something that drew me closer, even though every instinct told me to run. My hand lingered there for a moment, just beneath the waistband, feeling the warmth of his skin. I could feel the steady thrum of his pulse, and the closeness between us felt more intense than it ever had before. I knew I should pull away, but couldn't. My fingers inched lower, brushing against the edge of his boxers, the thin fabric doing little to hide the hardness beneath. My heart raced, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, but before I could stop myself, I leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to the bare skin just above his waistband. His scent filled my senses, the faint hint of cologne mixed with something warm and familiar, and it made my head spin. That's when he stirred again, more noticeably this time, his body shifting beneath me, a low murmur escaping his lips, and I froze. My heart pounded in my chest for a moment, thinking he was going to wake up, to open his eyes and see me there, caught in the act. Panic flared inside me, but before I could pull away, his hand moved, his fingers brushing against my arm. Just a light touch, but it sent a jolt of electricity through me. I stared at him, my breath coming in shallow bursts as his hand slid higher up to my shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. His eyes fluttered open, and I felt my stomach drop. There was a brief moment of confusion in his gaze, like he was trying to piece together what was happening, but then his eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the shift. "Son," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep but tinged with something darker, something more dangerous. His hand slid up to cup the back of my neck, pulling me closer. "What are you doing?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. I was caught, frozen in place by the intensity of his gaze, by the way his hand tightened slightly against my skin. My mind was screaming at me to apologize, to get up and leave the room, but I couldn't move. I was trapped in the moment, trapped by the way his eyes darkened as they flicked down to where my hand still rested on that part. "Do you know what you're doing to me?" he whispered, his voice low and dangerous. His hand slid down to rest on my waist, his grip firm but not forceful. There was a tension in his voice that made my pulse race, a mix of frustration and desire that sent a shiver down my spine. I stammered, my face flushing with embarrassment. I should have pulled away, should have apologized, but the words wouldn't come. I was too close to him now, too caught up in the moment to think clearly. Dad's grip on my waist tightened slightly, pulling me closer until our bodies were almost touching. "You don't have to stop," he murmured, his voice soft but insistent. "If this is what you want, you don't have to stop." My heart leapt into my throat at his words. The conflict inside me was overwhelming, a mix of fear, desire, and confusion. I knew this was wrong, knew that we shouldn't be doing this, but the way he was looking at me, the way his fingers grazed my skin, made it impossible to think rationally. I swallowed hard, my eyes flicking up to meet his. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I don't know what I want." Dad's gaze softened slightly, but the tension between us didn't fade. "I think you do," he said quietly, his hand sliding up to cut my cheek, his thumb brushing lightly against my skin. "You just need to let yourself feel it." Dad's words echoed in my mind, reverberating through every thought, scattering any sense of control I still had. "You just need to let yourself feel it." I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. Was it desire, fear, or something even more complicated that I couldn't fully comprehend? All I knew was that I couldn't move. My body, my mind, everything was frozen under the weight of his gaze. His hand lingered on my cheek, his thumb tracing a slow path over my skin, and it was like every nerve in my body had come alive under his touch. I wanted to pull away, to say something that would break the tension, but nothing came. Instead, I sat there, my breath shallow, my heart racing, waiting for him to make the next move. His other hand slid down from my waist to my thigh, his fingers brushing lightly against the fabric of my pants. The touch was so soft, so tentative, and yet it sent a surge of heat through me that I couldn't ignore. I bit my lip, trying to hold back the flood of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I swallowed hard, my throat tight, afraid that didn't even begin to describe what I was feeling. There was fear, yes, but there was also something else, something I didn't want to admit to myself. I was drawn to him, to the way his hands felt on my skin, to the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered in the world. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and utterly impossible to resist. I don't know what to do, I whispered, my voice barely audible. The words felt small, inadequate to describe the turmoil swirling inside me, but yet, I continued. Dad's hand slid up to the back of my neck, pulling me just a little closer. His breath was warm against my skin, and the closeness between us made my pulse race even faster. "You don't have to do anything," he whispered, his lips brushing lightly against my ear. "Just let me take care of you." My heart skipped a beat at his words, and for a moment, I thought about pulling away, about ending this before it went any further. But before I could make a decision, his hand slipped higher, grazing the side of my face, tilting my head toward him. His lips were so close now, just a breath away from mine, and I could feel the heat radiating from his body, pulling me in like gravity. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding in my chest. This was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but the desire building inside me, the way my body reacted to his touch, was too strong to fight. I could feel the warmth of his breath against my lips, and it was like the entire world had faded away, leaving only us, caught in this moment that felt both dangerous and inevitable. And then, before I could stop myself, I leaned in. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were both testing the waters, unsure what came next, but it didn't stay soft for long. As soon as our lips met, something shifted between us, something dark and consuming. Dad's hand tightened on the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and the kiss deepened. His lips moved against mine with a hunger that took me by surprise. I gasped softly, my hands instinctively clutching at his shirt as he pulled me closer. His body was warm and solid against mine, and the kiss was all-consuming, overwhelming. I could feel the tension between us growing with every second, like a fire that was spreading out of control. My mind screamed at me to stop, to pull away before it was too late. But my body had other ideas. Dad's hands were everywhere, on my waist, my back, my arms, pulling me closer. His touch sent sparks of heat racing through me. I could feel the hardness of his body against mine, and it made my pulse quicken. The desire building inside me was impossible to ignore. "Son," he whispered against my lips, his voice rough with need. "I've wanted this for so long." His words sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. Wanted this? I couldn't wrap my mind around the idea that he had been thinking about me in this way, that this wasn't just something that had happened in the heat of the moment. He had wanted me, and now that we were here, it was clear that he wasn't going to stop unless I asked him to. But I didn't want to stop, and I definitely didn't. I leaned into the kiss, my hands sliding up to his shoulders, pulling him even closer. I could feel the tension in his body, the way his muscles tensed beneath my touch, and it made my own desire flare even hotter. His lips moved against mine with a kind of urgency, like he had been holding back for too long, and now that he had crossed this line, there was no going back. Dad's hands slid down on my hips, gripping me tightly as he pulled me onto the bed beside him. The movement was quick, almost seamless, and before I knew it, I was lying next to him, his body pressed against mine. The heat between us built to a fever pitch, and he kissed me again, harder this time. His hands roamed over my body with a hunger that made my head spin. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions I couldn't control. This was happening. It was real, And no matter how wrong it felt, no matter how much I knew we were crossing a line, we couldn't uncross it. I didn't want it to stop. "Tell me you want this," Dad whispered against my lips, his hand sliding up under my shirt, his fingers brushing lightly against my skin. "Tell me." I swallowed hard, my breath coming in shallow gasps as his hand moved higher, tracing a path up my chest. Did I want this? My body certainly did. There was no denying the way I responded to his touch, the way my pulse raced whenever he kissed me. But the conflict inside me was overwhelming, a mix of guilt, fear, and desire that I couldn't sort out. But in that moment, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the way he looked at me, the way his touch sent shivers through my body, the way his voice made my heart skip a beat. Dad groaned softly, his grip tightening as he kissed me again, his mouth moving down to my neck, leaving a trail of heat in its wake. The intensity of it all was too much, too fast, but I couldn't stop myself from responding, from arching into his touch, from letting myself get lost in the moment. The line had already been crossed, and now there was no going back. The room felt warmer now, the air heavy with everything we weren't saying, with all the lines we had already crossed. Dad's hands moved over my skin with a deliberate kind of urgency, like he had been waiting for this for far too long, and now that he had me here, he wasn't going to hold back. I could feel the weight of his body pressing against mine, his warmth enveloping me. Despite the turmoil racing through my mind, my body responded to every touch. His mouth moved lower, trailing heated kisses down my neck, each one sending a shiver through me. I gasped softly, my fingers digging into his shoulders as I tried to keep myself grounded, but it was no use. The sensation of his lips on my skin, the way his hands explored every inch of me, was overwhelming. I was completely and utterly lost in the moment, lost in him. "Dad," I whispered, my voice trembling as his hand slid up under my shirt, pushing the fabric higher until it bunched around my chest. The heat from his touch made my skin burn, made my heart race, and I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. He pulled back just long enough to lift my shirt over my head, tossing it aside without a second thought. His eyes darkened as he looked down at me, his gaze intense, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name, desire, longing. It didn't matter. All I knew was that I couldn't look away, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "You're perfect," he murmured, his voice thick with something raw and primal, something that made my pulse quicken. His hand moved to my waist, fingers brushing lightly against the bare skin there, and I shuddered under his touch. The way he looked at me, the way his hands moved over me like I was something to be savored, something he had wanted for so long. It was too much, too intense, but I couldn't bring myself to stop it. He leaned down again, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was anything but gentle. It was hungry, demanding, filled with a need that mirrored my own, and I responded in kind. My hands slid up to tangle in his hair as I pulled him closer. His body pressed against mine, the heat between us growing with every second, and I could feel the hardness of him against me, could feel the way he wanted me just as much as I wanted him. I swallowed hard, my breath coming in short gasps as I tried to find my voice. Did I want this? My body was screaming yes, but my mind was still a whirlwind of confusion. This was my dad. We weren't supposed to be doing this, but the way he touched me, the way his lips moved against mine, made it impossible to think clearly. All I knew was that I didn't want him to stop. "I want you," I whispered, the words escaping my lips before I could stop them. And as soon as they were out, I knew there was no turning back. My hands roamed over his back, feeling the taut muscles beneath his shirt, the way his body tensed and relaxed with every movement. It was like we were both caught in a storm, unable to stop, unable to slow down. My breath hitched, and I arched into him, my body craving more, needing more. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but feel. I gasped softly, my hips arching instinctively as his hand moved with more purpose, sending waves of pleasure coursing through me. My mind was a blur, my thoughts scattered, but I didn't care. All that mattered was him, the way he touched me, the way his body felt against mine. "Dad," I whispered, my voice trembling as his movements grew more intense, more demanding. I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take, wasn't sure how long I could hold on. He kissed me again, his lips moving angrily over mine, and I responded with equal fervor. My hands clutched at his shirt as I tried to pull him closer, try to close the distance between us completely. The heat between us was unbearable, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. But I didn't want it to stop. I needed this, I needed him. And all this time, he had been thinking about me, wanting me in the same way I had secretly wanted him. The thought made my pulse race, made the desire building inside me flare even hotter. My mind was a blur, my body trembling with need, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on. But just as quickly as it had begun, the moment was shattered. A sound from outside the door, a soft creak like the floorboard shifting, made us both freeze. Dad pulled back, his breath coming in ragged gasps as his eyes darted to the door for a moment. Neither of us moved. The tension between us was replaced by a sudden rush of panic. What was that? I whispered, my voice barely audible, but my heart was pounding in my chest. Dad shook his head, his hand still resting on my waist, but the fire that had been burning in his eyes moments ago was gone, replaced by something darker. I don't know, he muttered. The silence in the room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on us. And the reality of what we had been doing came crashing down around me. This was wrong, this was so wrong, and now someone had hurt us, someone new. My heart pounded in my chest, the fear of being caught racing through my mind. Dad's hand lingered on my waist, his touch warm, but the tension between us had shifted. The fire that had been burning moments ago was now replaced with something colder. Panic, fear, guilt. We stayed frozen for a few seconds, both of us listening intently to the silence outside the room. There was no more sound, no more creaking of floorboards, no footsteps approaching. Maybe it was nothing, maybe we were still alone, but the thought that someone might have heard, that someone might know, was enough to shatter the moment entirely. As Dad pulled back, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts, his hand slipped away from my waist, and he ran it through his hair, looking conflicted. "We can't do this," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "This is wrong." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt the weight of everything we had just done crashing down around me. This was wrong. We both knew that, and yet we had let it happen anyway. The desire, the tension had taken over, clouding our judgment, and now we were left standing in the aftermath. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for, getting caught up in the moment, letting things go too far, or for wanting him in the first place. Maybe it was all of it. Maybe it was the fact that I had crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed. Dad stood up from the bed, pacing back and forth, running his hand over his face as if trying to make sense of what had just happened. "No, it's not your fault," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "It's mine. I should have stopped. I should have." He broke off, shaking his head, his eyes filled with regret. The room felt colder now, the intimacy between us completely gone, replaced by the heavy weight of guilt and confusion. I pulled my shirt back on, my hands trembling as I tried to process what had just happened, what this meant for us, for our family. Maybe we should just forget this ever happened," I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. The idea of forgetting, of pretending like none of this had ever taken place, felt impossible. But what other choice did we have? We couldn't go back. We couldn't undo what had just happened. But we could try to move on, try to act like everything was still normal. Dad stopped pacing, his back to me as he stared at the door. "Yeah," he muttered, though his voice didn't sound convincing. "Maybe that's for the best." We both knew that wasn't true. There was no forgetting this. It would hang between us, unspoken, but always present, no matter how hard we tried to act like everything was normal. This moment would always be there, lingering in the background. I stood up from the bed, feeling shaky and uncertain. I should go," I said, my throat tight. The weight of the situation was pressing down on me, and I needed to get out, to breathe, to think. Dad turned to face me, his expression unreadable for a moment. I thought he was going to say something to stop me, but instead he just nodded. "Yeah," he said softly, his voice barely audible. "Maybe that's a good idea." I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. My heart was pounding, my mind racing, and I needed to get away from the weight of his gaze. The reality of what we had done. I moved toward the door, my hand on the doorknob, but just before I opened it, I hesitated. "Dad," I whispered, glancing back at him. "Do you regret it?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions, guilt, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite place. He didn't answer right away, and for a moment, I thought he wasn't going to answer at all, but then he sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't know," he said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. "I don't know what to think right now." His words hung in the air between us, and I nodded, understanding. I didn't know what to think either. Everything was too complicated, too overwhelming, and I wasn't sure how to make sense of it all. I opened the door, stepping into the hallway, and as I walked down the dark corridor, the weight of what had just happened pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. This wasn't something we could ignore. It wasn't something we could pretend never happened. But for now, that's what we had to do. The next few days passed in a blur. I avoided Dad as much as possible, spending most of my time out of the house or in my room, trying to sort through the whirlwind of emotions that had taken over since that night. Every time I thought about what had happened, a rush of guilt and shame washed over me. But there was something else too, something I didn't want to admit. I missed him, even though I knew it was wrong, even though I knew we couldn't be together. Part of me missed the closeness we had shared that night. It wasn't just the physical connection. There was something deeper, something that went beyond the kiss, beyond the touch. It was like we had opened a door that neither of us had realized was there. And now that it was open, it was impossible to close. But no matter how much I missed him, I knew we couldn't go back. We had to move on, had to pretend like it never happened, for the sake of our family, for the sake of ourselves. A few days later, Dad left. He didn't say goodbye. I heard the door close early in the morning, the sound of his car starting up as he drove away. It was a quiet departure, but that was fitting. We both knew there was nothing left to say. The house felt empty without him, and the silence was almost suffocating. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where he had been just days before, and I couldn't help but wonder if things would ever be normal again. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe that night had changed everything, but for now, all I could do was try to forget, even if I didn't want to. That was a powerful story, and I hope it resonated with you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more heartfelt and emotional LGBT stories. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about the story? How did it make you feel? Let's start a conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.